Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 69 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, man, what's going on? What's happening?
I'm doing pretty good, actually.
Episode 69.
Yeah, how about that?
That's a lot.
It is. If you think 69 on this, 79 on...
Is that like the Pisces sign, too?
Regular TCAP? What, 69?
Yeah.
I don't know nothing about... Are you in... Is Aries in your moon rising? I don't even know what any of that means. Bad moon rising?
Bad moon rising.
You trying to talk to me about astrological stuff?
I don't know what I'm thinking about.
You obviously don't know who you're talking to.
I will learn.
All right, man. No, I'm doing good.
Yeah?
I'm doing better than you, probably.
Yeah, you definitely are. You don't have a dual hernia.
Getting ready for surgery.
I know it. After I leave here, I got to go home and do the old surgical scrub the night before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to know. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, and then I got to do it again in the morning.
Later on at night, I'll just be sitting around trying to
just picturing Gibby lathered up.
Whatever I think a surgical scrub is. I don't need that.
All
in
I
my
know
head.
is it had to be a constant. The nurse said a constant 2 minutes in the area. I'm like, what?
That seems like a long time.
That's a long time to scrub an area. That's how people get hurt. I mean, that's how this started.
How clean do you need this thing to be?
This is how this happened.
Oh man, it's not funny, but I mean it is funny.
Oh yeah,
but
it's all good.
You going into surgery is not funny.
Yeah, I'll have some cool mesh inside of me after by this time tomorrow night.
I don't know if "cool" is the right word.
Well,
as cool as surgical mesh can be, I guess. All right, Gibbs, we got some new Patreon shout outs. I'm going to do them. If you want to hear Gibby do them,
yeah.
He did the Patreon shout outs on the regular True Crime All the Time episode. It's a first. It was something.
Something special.
It was awesome. All right. We had James Case, Becky Towns.
Hey, Becky.
Scott Zodiac Stevenson.
That's ZS.
If I was not named after my great-grandfather, my middle name, his first name, I would change my middle name to Zodiac.
You would?
It's badass.
You want to be named after a famous serial killer. Okay.
Yeah, I really wasn't thinking that through.
Okay. It's out there now. Too late.
No, I'm changing it to Gibby.
You can't have Gibby. It
can't be changed. I will legally change my middle name to Gibby.
You already buy
I will be Mike Gibby.
Gibby.com.
But Scott jumped out at our highest level, so we appreciate that.
Sure do.
We had L. Rawson, Jacob Hughes, Allie Myrick.
Thanks, Allie.
Vanessa Ricard, Steph.
Just Steph. Steph it up.
And that's enough. Bailey Matson.
Thank you.
Or as Gibby said, Billy Madison.
Well, when you hear it, Bailey Matson, you think Billy Madison. Or at least I do.
Tessa Alderton. Denora Golitz.
Yeah.
Who was a Patreon supporter, jumped up to our highest level.
How awesome is that?
And is also a big supporter on criminology. So
love some true crime.
Yeah, very much appreciated. We had Susan Graves.
Yeah.
Jacqueline Hoffman.
Oh, yeah.
Who's a big supporter.
Well, yeah, she just joined up.
And left us a voicemail that we played on.
We did.
The TCAT episode. Dusty Thorhauer.
Yeah.
Who we've been communicating with a little bit. Elizabeth Sirk. Vanessa Kors. Paula Dawson. Elijah Diefenbach.
Hey, Elijah.
So I said it one way, you said it another way. We're going to find out which way is correct.
Me.
I think you are, but I wanted to be different because that's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah, you're different, all right.
Just how different, nobody knows.
That's right.
Renee Boyle, Jordan Lemons.
Jordan.
And we love Jordan.
We do.
Jordan did an episode with us, a hometown episode.
Sure did.
She was on the whole episode. She's been one of our biggest supporters from the very beginning.
She did a great job, too.
And she's back with us on Patreon, so that's very much appreciated.
Yep.
Hannah Sloan, Melissa Cummings.
Oh, Hannah. I'm sorry. Thanks, Hannah.
Are you going backwards now?
Well,
or it took you a while to realize?
It just hit me. So yeah, I talked to Hannah on social media. So thank you.
It just took a minute because there is a lot of people on social media.
There is, But yeah.
Melanie Link, who is big on social media as well.
Awesome.
And was a Patreon supporter. She's back with us now.
Like that?
Jared Benfield.
Yeah.
Brian Gibson.
No, just just Brian Gibson.
You got a little jealous, didn't you?
Don't be passing the Gibby out like that.
You got a little jealous. Brian is really cool. He's been communicating with us a lot. He jumped out at our highest level.
Yeah.
As did Shane Lidstrom.
Appreciate that.
So that is very much appreciated. And if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Let's do it. How far back?
As far into the vault as it will let us go.
Okay.
We selected Lori Johnson.
Hey, Lori.
So Lori's been a longtime supporter, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate the people that continue to support us month after month. We appreciate all these new supporters.
Yeah, I appreciate you more than him.
Why has everything got to be a contest with you?
I don't know.
Nobody appreciates them more than I do.
I do.
If anything, we appreciate them equally.
Okay, we'll be equal.
Now, we also had some PayPal support, Gibbs. We had Emily Brower,
Emily,
Kelly Holiday,
thank you.
and Shelly Lanthorn.
Awesome, Shelly.
So all of that is much appreciated. And I can't leave out all of our folks on social media. I'm seeing a lot of sharing of posts and retweets.
Yeah,
and
they're doing great out there.
a lot of people telling their friends. All of that helps immensely.
Keep it up, gang.
Now, we have to give a big shout out to Lindsay Sklerick.
We do.
Has been helping us a lot recently.
Man, she's been on fire.
Writing and researching and helping us out with some of these unsolved cases.
I don't know how she does it because she's carrying twins right now. I don't know when she's given birth, but man, she's
pretty active.
Yeah, she is. She's like a yoga master. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's not saying it's easier.
She does some poses, Gibbs, that hurt me just seeing them.
Oh, I know. You're
I
like
pulled muscles just seeing a picture of Lindsay do one of her poses.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know how she does. She's got to be super strong because she's like balancing herself like on a finger.
Well, I think that's what yoga is for, right?
Is that what it is? I don't know.
It makes your core strong. It makes everything.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so we appreciate you so much.
I don't know why I'm talking about yoga. Everybody listening knows I know nothing about yoga.
You don't work out. You don't exercise. Yoga, you'd hurt yourself.
I told you I've hurt myself looking at yoga.
Just the fact that you have this, what's this machine by me called?
A teeter?
A teeter? Is that like an inversion table?
Yeah,
or
it
something?
stretches out my back.
Yeah, just right that alone probably hurts you.
No, that helps me. But I need that because I don't work out. So I need the teeter to...
Because you're a totter?
Because I'm a totter. Now, at the time that this episode is dropping, we have a regular TCAT episode out at the same time. We're talking about Harvey Miguel Robinson.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's a great episode.
It is, but it is brutal. For, and I hate to say a small number, but for the small number of murders that he committed compared to some of the people we talk about. Right? This guy's not in the teens or anything like that, 20, 30 people, but his murders are particularly brutal, and it's his age. He starts at 17, and 17, 18 years old is committing some of the most horrific murders in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So make sure you check that out. All right, Gibbs, do you want to get into this episode of Unsolved? And I don't know why I ask you, because what would I do if you said no?
Well, I'm not going to say no. I think
we'd have to shut it down.
Shut it down. We dive right in.
I guess that's what you'd call a rhetorical question.
If you want to call it that, we can call it that.
Or I can explain what rhetorical means.
You just make up your own little words. Got your own little Fergie dictionary.
Yeah, it's called the English Language Dictionary.
Is that
That's the one that I use.
Is that what it is? Yeah, people. Yeah. Well, I got my own.
I know you do.
And it's a fabulous.
And one day it's going to make
reference.
you a lot of money.
One day. So let's do it.
So we're talking about the Keddie murders, and this is one that grabs a lot of people, and it's one that's been on our list since we started the Unsolved offshoot. And I'm really not sure why it's taken us this long to get to it.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've talked about doing it forever,
for a long time,
and it just finally came around that it was a good time for us to do it. And Lindsay helped out, very probably one of the more higher profile Unsolved?
I think it is. It's been covered
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, it's a fascinating case, I would say.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. So we're in Keddie, California.
Yeah.
Keddie was named after the person that surveyed the town.
So back when they were trying to put the railroad through, there's a surveyor that looked at this area, and his name was Keddie, and he got to name this little village at the time, right? Because it's all it was just a little village back then.
Sure.
And he was the one that was lucky enough to get his name attached to something,
And it stuck.
and it stuck. And that's how a lot of things are, right? It's normally by who finds the town, right? I mean,
Yeah, if it's not named after a famous person or something like that.
yeah. Normally, it's who was the explorer or things like that. I mean, I know like Dayton,
One of the first settlers.
one of the first settlers was so it was like Jonathan Dayton that our area was named after.
Well, you are just a walking history lesson.
I am something.
So we start this story on April 12th, 1981. Sue Sharp's 14-year-old daughter, Sheila, came home to find the majority of her family brutally murdered. Sheila had been at a sleepover the night before, and when she came home and she sees this unbelievable scene, she immediately runs back to the neighbors, who go across the street to the resort owners, who call the local law enforcement.
Yeah, so back then, you got to think about people didn't have cell phones, right? And this is more of a resort area. Well, when it was first developed, it was resort area. At this time, it was just more of a
It was a bunch of cabins.
cabins that people either rented or some of them owned. But it definitely was not the resort area anymore. But there was very few phones. So the guy that owned the majority of the cabins there and the landlord, he's the one that had the phone. So that's why they ran over there. That's the only place they could go to get the authorities.
So when police get there, they find Sheila's mother, Sue, her brother, Johnny, Johnny's friend, Dana, all dead in the living room. But before we get into the details, Gibbs, let's give a little background.
Yeah.
Sue Sharp and her 4 children moved from Connecticut to California to get away from an abusive husband. They stayed with family for a little while. Then they eventually got a trailer. And then they moved to Cabin 28 at the Keddie Resort in Keddie, California. And this was in November of 1980.
And that was a pretty big upgrade for them. I mean, you come from a small trailer to this cabin, for them, it was a major move up.
Well, because this cabin had 3 bedrooms, had a lot more space than the small trailer that they were living at in Quincy, California. But you kind of mentioned it, Gibbs. At this point in time, Keddie didn't have the best reputation. Not the reputation that maybe it had once had. By this point in time, it was looked at as a low-income town on the decline. But again, for them, like you said, this was a move up. This was them getting more space.
Yeah.
This was them living in an area of, trees and streams and places where the kids could play.
Yeah, I mean, for a kid, it's
for a kid,
dream.
it would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Sue's oldest son, Johnny, he was 15 years old, had a bedroom that was in their partial basement.
Yeah.
Bedroom was kind of unfinished, but
Yeah, I can see. I actually had a cabin in Tennessee on down by Norris Lake, and one of those A-frames, and we had a unfinished lower level basement that you can only access from the outside. So I easily could have put a bedroom in there for sure.
and this was kind of a similar situation to what you were describing in your cabin, Gibbs. There was no staircase inside the house. So for Johnny to get to his bedroom, he had to enter through a door in the back of the cabin. He actually had to go outside to get to his bedroom in the basement.
Good thing you're in the woods, man. Middle of the night, you got to go to the restroom.
You just go outside?
Just go outside.
Why do I have to be in the woods? Is that frowned upon in my subdivision?
Well, typically,
My neighbors never say anything about it. But
you just go ahead and do it, and they just look the other way.
I guess nobody's ever said anything to me.
They're like, children, shield your eyes.
Sue also had 2 younger sons. Rick was 10, Greg was 5. They shared a bedroom on the main floor. And then Sue and her daughter Tina, who was 12, they shared the other bedroom. At this point in time, Sheila, who we just talked about, she was not living with the family. She was the eldest daughter at 14. She didn't move in with them until February of 1981, after having a child in Oregon that she put up for adoption. So after Sheila moved in with everyone, the mom, Sue, would either sleep in the twin bed in her room, giving the queen bed to her 2 daughters, or sometimes she would sleep on the couch in the living room, essentially giving the daughters the whole room.
Yeah, from most of the things that I read, she slept more on the couch than anything. That was her go-to. Maybe she just wanted to get away from the girls, you know?
I can sympathize with that. Sometimes I just need to get away.
You just need to get away and come down here and
podcast
and sleep on one of these couches down here.
Now, Sue received about $250 a month in assistance, which only covered her rent for the cabin. She was also getting food stamps and other forms of welfare. And she also received some educational assistance from the government to attend school. She was a student at the Feather River Community College, and she was studying business. And police would gather some information about Sue from interviewing neighbors and friends. And it came out that Sue dated a lot of men, but she tended to break off relationships for what people would say were very small things.
Yeah, but a lot of men wanted to be with her. She was pretty heavily sought after. Now, this is Keddie. I don't know how big the community was that she was well known in, but from everything I read, the guys wanted to be with her.
Well, to the point where one man allegedly proposed to her on their first date. Her boyfriend at the time of the murder, she had just met about a week before, but he was out of town visiting his parents at the time of the murders. He had left a couple of days before they occurred. Now, we mentioned that the night before the murder, Sheila stayed with neighbors. She stayed with the Seabolts at cabin 27.
So right next door.
Right next door. And it was strange that Sheila had stayed with the Seabolts by herself, because a lot of times it was Sheila and Tina together staying the night over at the neighbors.
So yeah, normally they spend the night together over there. But this time I think what happened was that Mrs. Seabolt wanted just the older girls to spend the night. So Tina had to stay home with her mom and brothers. So because of that, Tina went home, I'd say somewhere around 10 o'clock that night. Now, her older brother, Johnny, and his best friend, Dana, they were out on the town, and they would eventually come home to cabin 28. The only thing is, no one knows exactly when they showed up. Were they home when the intruders came, or did they show up after the intruders were already there and walked in on something? And that's the big mystery there. No one can really define that time frame of when that occurred.
So we mentioned that Sheila returned home that morning. She opened the front door around 7:45 a.m., saw the bodies lying on the floor. Her mother was covered in a blanket, but the 2 boys were not. Sheila also saw a knife on the floor that was bent to such an extreme angle. I mean, we're talking about like a 45-degree angle here, Gibbs.
That's a lot of force.
She thought that this was some type of like pocket knife that had been left open. And that's the type of angle that we're talking here.
Yeah, that's extreme.
And we mentioned it. She ran back to the Seabolts cabin. So after they got to the landlord and the sheriff was called, a car was dispatched to the scene.
So the sheriff dispatched a car to the scene. Meanwhile, Sheila and Mrs. Seabolt, they'll go around and they'll knock on the boys' window. And this would be the 3 younger boys. And so the boys, Greg, Rick, and the neighbor boy, Johnny Smart, They'll see them, they'll wave them over to the window, they'll help them out through the window because they just wanted to get them out and away from the cabin because they don't know if anybody's still in there that could hurt them. So that's their concern. So they get the kids out, and then at that point, Mrs. Seabolt's older son, Jamie, he decides he's just going to go in the place just to make sure there's no more survivors in there and see who's in the cabin. So he goes in, and he goes up and down the stairs, and he doesn't find anybody. He comes back out, and it would be right around 8 a.m. that the first deputy would arrive at the scene.
So this was Deputy Hank Clement. He arrived, he did a quick search, and he confirmed the murders. At 8:25, Sergeant Jerry Shaver shows up, and he had Clement stand guard in front of the cabin, and Sergeant Shaver starts conducting interviews. It's about 8:45 when Sue's brother, Don, shows up, and he tells police about Sue's husband and their pending divorce. And we talked about it, Gibbs. Sue had left Connecticut, moved all the way to California to get away from her abusive husband.
Sure did.
This was a guy that was in the Navy. So Don, her brother, is telling police about this guy. Don also informed police that the ex-husband didn't know Sue's new address and had not seen the family since November of 1979. So that's a number of years.
That's a long time. Not to see your family.
Yeah. When Assistant Sheriff Ken Shanks and Officer Don Stoy arrived, they were briefed. They took over investigating inside the cabin. They took pictures of the crime scene, and they collected evidence. Shaver continued doing interviews, and Clement was sent to all of the houses in the area to check on the residents. By noon that day, there was a California Department of Justice helicopter hovering around the area, taking aerial photographs. And allegedly, they caught video of two men that they thought could have been the killers sneaking out of town. Of course, Gibbs, these are aerial photographs.
Yeah, so especially in this time of
the early 80s.
Early 80s, so you might see a couple people exiting the woods or whatever, but what does that tell you? It doesn't tell you
they
anything.
could have been hunters, could have been Sasquatch for all I know.
Yeah, Sasquatch, man.
Instead of two guys, it was one big Sasquatch.
Sasquatch is real.
Well, sure.
Okay.
I've seen that show where they say
$6 Million Man?
No, like Sasquatch hunters or Bigfoot hunters or whatever. But all they ever say is, "Do you hear that?"
You hear
and
that?
The other guy says, "Yeah, I heard that."
Yeah. Do you smell that?
Do you smell that?
Yeah, I smell it too.
But you never see Bigfoot.
No.
Why is that?
I don't know. But he's out there.
But they're always hearing something.
He's somewhere.
That's kind of like those ghost shows. Like, did you feel that? It got cold.
Yeah. You feel that on the back of my neck?
When investigators enter through the front door, the closest body was that of Johnny's. He was lying parallel to the front door, just inches away from the knife that Sheila had seen, the one that we talked about that was bent. 2 feet away from Johnny was Dana's body, and he was lying with his head barely on the corner of a couch cushion that was lying on the floor off of the couch.
Which is bizarre, because you got to remember, these boys were brutally murdered. So why would someone prop somebody's head up and put a cushion underneath it for comfort? It's bizarre. Maybe he just fell on the cushion that way. Maybe the cushion fell on the floor during a struggle, and this is where his head lay.
It could be, but you could also be right. I mean, that would be a very strange set of circumstances for it to have happened just that way.
Exactly.
For his head to end up. It could happen.
Yeah.
It's plausible, but it's also, you have to talk about the fact that it could be that the killer or killers purposefully put his head on a cushion. And why would they do that?
Well, there's a few reasons, right? I mean, if you wanted to try to give the look of the crime to be different than what it really is, I guess, throw you off, that maybe it was more of a some compassion given. You know what I mean? Maybe somebody put his head there because they knew him and they wanted to make sure.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Maybe, and I don't want to get into too much speculation right now, but we have covered stories where people have left victims in a way that showed that they cared about them.
Yeah, I remember when we did the Oakland.
Mm-hmm. That was one.
Yeah,
sure.
Oakland County, that the guy or girl or whoever, we don't know, it's unsolved, but whoever they were, they would lay the children in a way of comfort.
Sue was found with her head next to the couch and her feet close to where Dana was. She was lying on her right side and was covered in sheets and blankets that were determined to be taken from Tina's bed. Johnny's hands had been bound with medical tape, and his ankles were tied together with an extension cord. The same cord stretched over to Dana and was wrapped once around his feet and tied.
And Dana also had medical tape wrapped around his boots.
Dana's wrist also appeared to have been bound, but the tape was broken and only remained on his right hand. The medical tape that was used on Dana was wider than the tape used on Johnny. So both medical tape, but it sounds like, Gibbs, they were two separate or two different kinds or two different widths at least.
So like just two separate type of rolls that somebody brought with them.
Sue was also bound. Her wrist and ankles both had the thin medical tape wrapped around them, but it was done in a fairly loose fashion. And then an electrical cord was tied tightly over both her wrists and ankles. Her ankles and wrists were also connected by a third electrical cord, and that cord was tied from her wrists between her thighs and was pulled tightly enough that her knees were forced into like a bent position.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up, and you can see the pictures out there. If you want to go out and Google it, you'll find it. It's a little disturbing.
Well, there's no doubt that Sue was, of the three in the cabin, the one that was bound the most. And then you get to the autopsy, and the autopsy report states that Sue's front teeth were all knocked loose. There was a small amount of blood in her mouth, and there was blood in her ears. There was no sexual abuse. The tape and electrical cords left ligature marks on her wrists and ankles. Her mouth was gagged with a blue bandana. And then there were balls of medical tape shoved in her mouth. And then on top of that, her underwear was shoved into her mouth as well before the bandana was put on.
Well, they really wanted her to be quiet, and clearly it must have worked because, you know, the other big part of the conversation around this terrible crime was why the three younger boys never heard anything.
Never woke up being just downstairs.
Yeah, and I guess it's just the fact that they were able to keep her from screaming.
And I also think that this lends itself, Gibbs, to the fact that no one in the other cabins hears anything. And these cabins are not that far apart.
No, they're fairly close, you know, for cabins, right? You normally when you think cabins in the woods, you think there's some good distance around you, but not in this case.
And then on top of the blue bandana, tape was placed over her mouth. So to your point, Gibbs, they did not want her to make any noise, and they went to great lengths to ensure that didn't happen.
They really did. I mean, not only did they gag her overkill, they bound her so tight, you know, also to make sure that she didn't kick things, knock things, make any type of noise. I mean, they really did make sure.
She probably couldn't move.
Move, yeah.
Sue was wearing what was described as a muumuu type lounging dress. It was pulled up past her pubic area. But again, there were no signs of sexual abuse. And she had on a white bra that had not been removed. The bottom of her feet, though, had significant amounts of blood on them. She had a stab wound on her neck, multiple stab wounds to the chest, lacerations on her scalp and face. She had skull fractures and a fracture of her right orbital. Sue also had multiple cuts on her left hand. The cause of death would be determined to be from the stab wounds.
And then on top of all that, Mike, is that she was also attacked with a claw hammer and received significant wounds with that as well. So, I mean, it was really brutal. I mean, like you talked about the knife stabbing to the chest and to the neck, and then she's also got this claw hammer that she was hitting the head with. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, it was just brutal. It wasn't somebody just coming in wanting to take care of business. I mean, that's frustration. That's something you do when you dislike somebody, right? If you just wanted to murder somebody quick and get out and not be seen, you take your knife, get them in the neck, move on, and get out. But they're taking a claw hammer, hitting them in the head, hitting them on their bodies. They're taking a knife, stabbing them in their chest or neck. So on top of all that, the killer or killers also brought to the cabin a air rifle, and it was said that they used the butt of the air rifle to smash her face.
This was a terrible crime scene. There's no doubt about it. This was a horrific murder just in talking about Sue. Then when you talk about Johnny, he was stabbed twice in the chest, multiple times in the neck, and was also beaten very badly around his head area. Dana died from head trauma and strangulation. His skull was fractured. The bones in his face were fractured from being hit in the head and the face so many times. But Dana was the only one that was strangled. And you mentioned hammers, Gibbs. There were 2 different hammers determined to be used in the attacks. And now we get to this bent knife. And we kind of tease the bent knife early on. The police find the bent knife, but they also find a butcher's knife and a claw hammer, both covered in blood, lying on a small wooden table near the kitchen. I don't think there's any doubt the killer or killers made no attempt to hide the murder weapons. Pictures were taken of the crime scene, but they were taken pretty late in the process, Gibbs. And there's a lot of speculation around this point, because by the time they get around to actually taking the pictures, a lot of things in the cabin had been moved. There was fingerprinting dust on everything. Now, one police report stated that they had to drive into Quincy to get a camera before they could take pictures. So maybe that's the reason, but that does seem strange. If you know you're going to a crime scene, one very important part of crime scene investigation is to take pictures, crime scene pictures.
Yeah, but then again, you got to think about this time in the 80s, this small village town. If they didn't have never experienced murder,
yeah, you're true. That's true.
Maybe they just didn't. They're like, oh shit, we've got murder.
we need a camera.
John, where's the camera at? I don't know, Bob. Don't you have a camera?
No, you make a good point.
So they had to go buy one, which is, I think it's not funny. There's nothing about this is funny. It's just, I think it's kind of like Mulberry. What's the old Barney Fife?
Mayberry?
Did
you say mulberry?
Mulberry.
Millberry?
I don't know.
Just keep going. You're going to get to Mayberry.
Yeah, eventually get there. It's like Mayberry, It's like they just never had to deal with something like this, and all of a sudden they do.
And you could be exactly right. Maybe I'm making too much out of it. Maybe this is not a police force that is used to this type of investigation. You just naturally kind of think when you're talking about stuff like this that you would have a camera.
Be like investigators kit 101. This is what you should have in your investigator kit.
You would think so.
Investigator tape off, camera, chalk.
Is that all you need?
Chalk.
The Department of Justice is called in. They show up. They start investigating. And one thing they discover is that the telephone in the girl's bedroom had been unplugged from the wall and the cord was cut. There was a soft pack of Camel cigarettes found on the couch. This was assumed to be left behind by the murderer or murderers. A wooden toolbox was missing that was normally in the kitchen. And it was inside this toolbox where the claw hammer was normally kept. And now, Gibbs, we have to talk about Tina, because it took hours before police realized that Tina was a missing person. Even though Justin, who slept in the basement that night, attempted to tell police that she was missing right away. So it took them a while, but once they realized that Tina was gone, they investigated her room. They found blood on the door to her bedroom and one drop of blood on her bed sheets. A pair of her shoes was missing, and Sheila would tell police that it was a pair of brown lace-up shoes that Tina rarely wore. Tina's red coat was gone as well, and a blue sweatshirt was found in the bathroom on the back of the toilet seat, and Sheila claimed that it didn't belong to any of the family members, but could possibly be Dana's. The Department of Justice brought in search dogs, so they were searching the surrounding area for Tina. They found a footprint behind the cabin, but at the time they didn't think it was significant. Now, during the initial investigation, authorities did not find the air rifle, and they didn't find the second hammer. The air rifle was allegedly lent to Marty Smart by a person named D. Lake, and Marty Smart is Justin's stepfather. Marty and Marilyn Smart lived just a couple houses down in cabin 26. At the time of the murder, Marty had a friend named Bo who was staying at the cabin with Marty and Marilyn. Bo had a long history of crime and violence and had done time for bank robberies. Marty met Bo at a VA hospital. Marty was there for PTSD, and Bo was there after a suicide attempt. After they met, Marty invited Bo to stay with him and his wife. This was about 2 weeks before the murders happened. An important thing to talk about is the fact that Marilyn Smart was very good friends with Sue. And it's been alleged that Sue had been telling Marilyn that she should leave Marty. The night of the murders, we talked about the fact that Justin was staying at the Sharps cabin. Marilyn, Marty, and Bo decided to go out to a local bar. The guys got all dressed up in suits. On the way to the bar, they stopped at cabin 28 and they tried to convince Sue to go out with them. Sue declined. She had all the kids staying at her house. And so Marty, Marilyn, and Bo went without her. So Marilyn would later claim that she had 2 beers at the bar. Marty had a mixed drink, but she didn't notice whether or not Bo had anything to drink. They're at the bar for about an hour when Marilyn decided that she wanted to go home. And apparently Bo was very angry over the fact that they had changed the type of music playing in the bar. So they all decided to leave. Now they're not home that long when Marty says to Bo that he wants to go back to the bar. But I guess Bo was pretty upset about this music thing. And he tells Marty that he needs to take a few minutes to calm down. And it's about 15 minutes later, the guys leave and Marilyn stays at home. She would not see them again until she woke up the next morning. And when she did, Marty was in bed with her and Bo was on the couch. But she doesn't remember them coming home. She would later say that both of their coats were missing and she never saw Marty's suit that he had on that night ever again. The next morning, after the murders, Justin goes home and he tells his mom, Marilyn, about what happened, that everyone at the Sharp residence was dead. And she doesn't believe him at first. She tells him not to joke around about something like that. And he says, no, Mom, they're all dead. And it's not like Justin was brought home by the police, right? He went home before, I believe, the police even got to the cabin after being pulled out of the window. Now, there was a neighbor, Jim Meeks, who reported that he went over to the Smarts that day to cut wood with Marty, and that when he got there, Marty was burning some debris. And this fellow saw a pair of men's shoes in the fire, And when Jim got home, he told his wife about the fire and that there were police over at the Sharp residence. His wife actually tried to call Sue, but obviously didn't get an answer. So after Jim's wife, LaRonda, has all this information, she actually calls Marilyn, and she's worried for her. She's concerned about her being home with Marty. And I think by this point, Marilyn is concerned herself.
Well, so she doesn't remember when they came home. She doesn't know what happened to his suit that he had on the night before. It's nowhere to be found now.
His coat's gone.
The coat's gone. The suit's gone. And her best friend, one of her good friends' husband, said that he saw Marty burning shoes in a woodpile all in the day after the murders. So it'd make you kind of wonder.
Yeah. I mean, she has some concern enough that she leaves her house. She goes to the Meeks home where Jim and LaRonda are, and she actually stays there for a little while. And she starts talking to the Meeks about her belief that Marty may have had something to do with this. Now, while she's there, Marty and Bo stop by and say that they're driving to Reno to drop Bo off at a hospital. Marty stops by again on his way home, and it was reported that he was very agitated, possibly high on something, and that he said he needed to finish something he started. And Marilyn's never going to go back and live with Marty. She stays with the Meeks for a little while, eventually takes her children and moves into an apartment. And it was reported that Marty would come, stand across the street screaming and yelling. And he did this day after day for a number of days, and then he eventually just stopped coming. So you got to call that a little strange.
That's bizarre. It's not like that movie where they come with the boombox and hold it up.
Say anything?
It's not like that.
I love that movie.
It's a little different.
Now, at one point, police question Justin, and they actually hypnotize him, and Justin implicates Marty in the Keddie murders. Justin would also claim that he had a dream about the murders. He said that he was on a boat. He sees two men. He sees Johnny and Dana fight with the men. They're both thrown overboard, and the men run, and then he sees a body at the bow of the boat. It's a woman's body, and he lifts a sheet off her, and she has a slash on her chest. And the dream goes on, and Justin says, he's with Sue. The men are using a knife on her, and Justin is trying to patch her up with a blue and white flowered rag. Now, this didn't make a lot of sense to investigators, but he does describe the men to police, and this is essentially where the composite sketches come from.
And it's really weird, right? It's just this dream he had, but the issue and what the police would say is that most likely he heard the ruckus. He came somehow from where he was at, standing in the hallway and overseeing what happened to everybody unnoticed, or the fact that if it was Marty being the stepdad wasn't going to do anything to him, and he was traumatized with what he's seen, and this is how he internalized it. So there's some there's some speculation that this is why he has these dreams. They did an interview with him when he was a little bit older, and he's unsure. He's really out of it. He's not. He's like, I think I was in the hallway. Maybe I seen it. But then again, I don't know if that's just what people keep telling me that I was. And he's having a real hard time trying to figure out what's reality and what's not. At a later date, he gets hypnotized again when he's a little bit older. I feel bad for this kid. He's just not to know if your visions are true or not.
No, I'm with you. That would be really tough to not be sure, to think maybe you saw a murder, but to not be sure about it. But you can imagine, Gibbs, some of this stuff is a little strange. There's a lot of debate whether he actually saw anything. Gibbs, this is all leading up to the fact that there are a lot of people that believe that Marty Smart had something to do with these murders.
Right.
There's also speculation that police or even the Department of Justice were involved in a cover-up. And I think that comes from an idea that Marty Smart was good friends with the county sheriff. 2 weeks before the murder, an officer in the Plumas County Sheriff's Department named Mike Gamberg was dismissed from the force on an unrelated dispute. But after the murder and he was reinstated, he was not allowed anywhere near the investigation. Gamberg knew the Sharp family, and he really wanted to help solve this case. 3 years after the murders, a skull was found in Camp 18. And this is a place about 30 miles away from Keddie in Butte County. And it would ultimately turn out to be Tina's. And they brought in people to do an extensive search of the area, and they would end up finding more of her bone fragments.
Being in the wilderness and things like that, the animals would have gotten to the body and moved it.
I don't think it's that strange after 3 years to only find bone fragments. Because as you mentioned, Gibbs, you're going to have a lot of animal activity, probably not going to be an intact skeleton at that point. But no arrests are ever made in the case, and it goes cold. But in 2010, Greg Hagwood becomes sheriff of Plumas County, and he reopens the investigation to take a deeper look into the case. In 2013, he brought back investigator Mike Gamberg to help him on the case. Because as we mentioned, Mike Gamberg was very invested in this case, but he wasn't allowed on it. He wanted to be on it. They started going through all the evidence boxes. One thing they found was a letter that had never been addressed in the past. It was written from Marty to Marilyn. And although Marilyn says she doesn't recall receiving or reading the letter, she does recognize it as Marty's handwriting. And the letter said, "I've paid the price for your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we're through. Great. What else do you want?" That doesn't sound good for Marty.
It's not good at all.
If he wrote that letter. Gamberg also tracked down a therapist that Marty had seen when he moved to Reno shortly after the murders. Now, Marty died in 2000, and it was after that the therapist told the police about a confession that Marty made. The therapist says that Marty admitted to murdering Sue because she was trying to get Marilyn to leave him, but said he didn't kill the others. He also told the therapist that he and the sheriff at the time were great friends, and he even lived with the sheriff for a little bit. Gamberg also discovered that there was a call into the Butte County Sheriff's Department about the skull on the 3-year anniversary of the murder. The call was not documented, but after searching for 10 days, Gamberg found the tape of the 911 call in the bottom of an evidence box in an unopened envelope. And this is the transcript of that 911 call. So the caller says, "Hello, I was watching the news and they were talking about the skull they found at the Feather Falls and they asked for any help." The dispatcher says, "Uh-huh." And the caller says, "And I was just wondering if they thought of the murder up in Keddie, up in Plumas County a couple of years ago, where a 12-year-old girl was never found." The police tried to compare the voice on the tape to previous suspects, but nothing came out of that. And I'm pretty sure, Gibbs, that Gamberg believes there was some type of cover-up. I mean, he's been quoted as saying, "There are things that were done, but I think most importantly, there are things that were not done that are hard to explain. I'm not by nature a conspiracy theorist, but there are facts and circumstances, the number and the nature of which I can't ignore anymore. They covered it up," is the way it sounds. In March 2016, a hammer was found in a pond in Keddie by someone searching with a metal detector. And at first, he didn't realize that the hammer was important. I mean, why would he? right? You find a hammer in a lake.
Yeah, it's not. I mean,
it's not going to jump out at you unless you think back to the murders and remember that a hammer was used and it was missing.
2016, that's a long time.
That's a long time to have that in your head. But eventually, this person does start to maybe remember that, Gibbs, because he starts to believe that maybe this hammer was important. He informed law enforcement about it, about the find, and the hammer matched the description of a hammer that Marty had claimed went missing back when he was first being interviewed by police. Hagwood says that the place the hammer was found was somewhere it would have been placed intentionally and not lost by accident. The hammer was tested for DNA, but again, I mean, how long had it been in that pond, Gibbs?
Man, 2016, that's so much time that's went by. You know, we're
chances of getting anything off of that,
anything preserved would be very, very difficult.
There has been speculation that the crime scene was staged due to the lividity in the bodies, and you kind of touched on this with the couch cushion, possibly. But it seems that maybe Dana was sitting up in a chair for a while before being placed on the floor, and that Sue may have been on the couch at some point. So in places different from where they were ultimately found, I think is the key. Now, Hagwood has stated that he believes even though Marty and Bo are both now dead, there are people alive who were either involved in the murders or have knowledge of what happened to Tina. And he has said that they have at least 6 persons of interest that they've identified. And, you know, I think, Gibbs, they're still actively investigating these murders. They're still trying to figure out exactly who did it.
Yeah, I think it's, we all have our opinions, right? I mean, I can certainly make a case that maybe it was Marty, you know, knowing the issues that Marilyn had with him, and her best friend Sue was trying to get Marilyn away from Marty. Some of the behavior that Marty had, you know, some of the theories that maybe, you know, Marty went there with Bo to take care of Sue, and then the boys showed up during or right at the end of them murdering Sue, and then at that point, because they were witnesses, that they had to go ahead and take care of the 2 boys. I read another article that because of Bo's history, that Bo didn't have a problem taking care of the kids, you know, doing what he had to. He didn't have an issue with that. And then the fact that why that was happening with the boys, that somehow Tina came into the picture, and at that point they determined that they needed to just go ahead and take Tina with them and get out of there. So, I mean, there's a lot of speculations, rabbit holes, right? It's always rabbit holes.
Always. But when it comes down to it, that's what we're left with, right? What happened in cabin 28 that night? And to your point, Gibbs, I think there are a lot of people that think Marty had something to do with this.
Yeah, I think most people think that Marty is the most viable suspect, you know, along with Bo. They're both deceased now, so we're really never going to know.
Not from them, anyway.
No. I mean, it'd be nice to put closure to it, because it is one of the probably more well-known unsolved cases in California, and maybe in the top 20 in the U.S., maybe. I mean, regardless, it was a terrible, brutal crime. No one should ever have to go through something so brutal like that. I just don't understand the whole purpose behind taking Tina. I think it was just she woke up and came out at the wrong time, and at that point they knew that they needed to escape from the scene, and instead of doing anything with her right then, right there, that they took her 30 some miles away and then murdered her at that site.
Yeah, I think at this point, Gibbs, with, you know, some of the supposed key players dead, it's going to have to be some kind of DNA, which I think is tough at this point.
Yeah.
It's not impossible.
No, we know that.
It's going to be somebody that has intimate knowledge that has never come forward, that all of a sudden decides they're going to.
Right.
They're going to tell everything they know, and it'll break the case wide open.
Yeah,
Short of that, I don't know what else it would be.
I agree with you.
But that's it. That's the case of the Keddie murders. We got some voicemails, Gibbs.
Voicemails like
Yep.
that.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Nikki from right down the road from you guys in Wilmington, Ohio. I am so excited to tell you that I have finally binged through both TCAT and TCAT Unsolved. You guys are great. I love your guys' chemistry. And you guys just be safe and keep your own time ticking.
Hey, thanks, Nikki. She's just down the road, man.
Yeah, she's not far at all.
Yeah, she's right around the corner, right there.
Well, it's a little farther than around the corner.
She's
but
right there, man.
just right there?
Yeah.
Hey, Bergie, this is Rob from the Furry Convention. I didn't know you had a podcast. Anyway, I'd like to know if there's any way anybody could find out if the East Area rapists knew Brian and Kate Majori, because I'm really curious about that. Could you let us know if you got any details on that? Thanks. See you at the next convention.
You see what you've done, Gibbs?
I didn't do anything.
That was actually really funny, though.
Well, it's just one of your one of your buddies from the furry convention. So
But then he does ask a serious question, and
I think the whole thing was serious, but okay.
I think the first part was a joke. Yeah, and it's a good question.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer for it yet. We're waiting for details to come out, but I'm very interested in as well to find out what connection, if any, Joseph J. D'Angelo had to Brian and Katie Majori. But I don't have the answer for it yet.
It's going to be it'll be interesting.
Just want to let y'all know they got him. That fella out there in California, Golden State Killer. Keep your own time ticking, I reckon.
So, Gibbs, when I first heard that one, I loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you and I have ever talked about it, but I love Sling Blade, the movie Sling Blade.
Yeah.
And that was a really good impression.
That was good.
I have seen that movie, I can't even tell you how many times. And it's one of those where if it's on, I don't care if it's 20 minutes in, 40 minutes in, I'll sit and watch it.
You just stop everything.
I'm mesmerized by the performance by Billy Bob Thornton in that
Yeah.
movie. Love it. So I got a kick out of that voicemail.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, it's Q from Portland, Oregon. I love the show. You guys are awesome. I just wanted you guys to cover a case in Portland, just random, any one of your choosing. There's not really like any crazy mystery murders here. So I would like to see what you guys could come up with. That would be so awesome. Thank you. I love you guys so much.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
And you know who else would like that? Carol C.
Carol Seawood. Because she's from Portland.
So, challenge accepted. We
Yeah.
will find a good Portland case.
Yeah.
To
You ever
do.
been to Portland?
Nope.
Okay.
Good question, though.
That's just what I wanted to know.
All right.
Hi, this is Erin. Hi, Mike and Gibby. I consider myself one of your silent listeners where I don't do a lot of social media interaction. And because I bought a house, I'm not able to support you guys via Patreon. However, I do share your podcast with all my coworkers whenever they ask me for a recommendation. But I'm calling because I got super excited that you guys did an episode on the Lewis Clark serial killer. And that's actually where I'm from, is the Lewiston area. And when I was growing up and I was doing the Summers Children's Theater, they always used him as a boogeyman. And we would always share stories about how, like, the ghosts of his victims would always appear on opening night. However, you guys did mispronounce one of the names of the towns. It's not called Moscow. It's called Moscow, like Costco. But that's okay. If you're not from the area, you're not actually, people just don't know that. Anyway, love you guys' podcast and keep your own time ticking.
It's okay, Gibbs.
It's hurt.
You're hurt?
I'm hurt.
I'm sure you didn't say it. I'm sure I said it.
Yeah, you did. You did,
But
actually.
It wouldn't really be an episode if we got every name right.
That's true.
So-
Exactly true. I'm glad you liked it, though.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Worked hard on that.
Hi guys, this is Melissa Cummings. I'm from Portland, Oregon. And I just wondered if you'd ever thought about doing the Paul Keller story. He was a serial arsonist from Seattle. My great-grandmother was a victim of his, and she lost a lot of my memorabilia that I was looking forward to having as a child. And I just think it's an interesting case. Anyway, keep your own time ticking.
All right, so I'm not familiar with that case, Gibbs, but we will check it out.
Yeah.
But a good tie-in there because Melissa was a new Patreon supporter.
Yes, she is.
And also left a voicemail.
Thank you.
All right, we appreciate it, everyone. That is another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.